Hello and welcome to 10 Things, the channel where you learn 10 new things that you didn't already know. Hopefully. Number 1. Chernobyl, Ukraine. I think we all know this one. The worst nuclear disaster in history was the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in what is now Ukraine. Flaws in the nuclear reactor's design and workers' failure to follow safety protocols led to the reactor exploding in April 1986. Scientists estimated the radioactive fallout from this explosion was 400 times greater than the fallout from the World War II bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Even countries as far away as Sweden were impacted by the contamination in the atmosphere. 2 men died on the spot, and 31 others was diagnosed with acute radiation syndrome. The government had to evacuate over 335,000 people living in the surrounding town of Pripyat. A 19-mile wide exclusion zone was also established around the reactor. Experts believe thousands of children and teenagers developed thyroid cancer because of radiation exposure. The zone around Chernobyl will remain uninhabitable for perhaps another 20,000 years. Number 2. Fukushima, Japan. In March 2011, northern eastern Japan experienced an earthquake measuring 9.1 on the Richter scale. This led to a tsunami with waves of over 132 feet. The government didn't realise that the tsunami had disabled the power supply to 3 of the nuclear reactors at the Fukushima plant. This led to a meltdown. 2 people died as a direct result, and around 160,000 people had to evacuate the area, leaving homes and businesses because they did not want to risk radiation exposure. While the government has been working on decontaminating the region and has allowed a certain number of people to return, as of July 2020, over 41,000 people were still displaced. Japan immediately closed down all its remaining nuclear power plants but began restarting them in 2015 following stringent safety measures. Number 3. Kyshtym, Russia. The third most deadly nuclear disaster happened in a place called Kyshtym, then a part of the Soviet Union. After World War II, the Soviets built Mayak, a nuclear plant in Kyshtym to produce weapons. In 1957, the reactor's coolant system malfunctioned, leading to an explosion that released huge amounts of radioactive materials into the air. Since the entire program was top secret, the authorities kept the accident under wraps and were slow to order evacuation. The Soviets denied the catastrophe until 1989, and even then continued to underplay the damage done. As a result, no one knows the exact number of casualties in Kyshtym left in its wake. Number 4. Windscale, UK. In 1957, the UK also experienced the worst nuclear disaster in its history. The country had built 2 nuclear reactors in Windscale, which is now part of Cumbria, in the late 1940s. In 1957, one reactor overheated, rupturing uranium cartridges. The result? A fire that burned for 16 hours, releasing toxic radioactive materials into the air. The authorities were unforthcoming about the extensive damage done, but banned milk sales in a 200 square mile radius around the plant for many weeks. Experts believe this action may have prevented many far-reaching health consequences. Number 5. 3 Mile Island, Pennsylvania, USA. In 1979, a broken pressure valve in a nuclear reactor at the 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania created panic among the plant workers. They made some errors in judgment which led to the reactor's partial meltdown. They also did not discover a radiation leak until more than 24 hours had passed. The governor asked women and children living within a 5-mile radius of the reactor to leave the area. Everyone panicked and more than 100,000 persons fled town. No severe health consequences were linked to this accident, but it resulted in widespread fear and strong public opposition to the nuclear program. Number 6. First Chalk River, Canada. Canada has only experienced 1 nuclear accident in its history, and that was in 1952 at Chalk River Laboratories. This just happened to be Canada's first nuclear research facility. The reactor's core got damaged because of a loss of coolant, and it went through a partial meltdown. Luckily, there was no loss of life as the problem was discovered in time. Cleanup was a long and involved process through hundreds and hundreds had to step up for the task. Interestingly, future US President Jimmy Carter was a nuclear engineer in the US Navy at the time and was part of the cleanup crew too. Number 7. Jalsovic Bonice, Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia built its first nuclear power plant in Bonice with the objective that it would run on the uranium produced locally. Unfortunately, many accidents occurred in this facility, with the most serious one occurring in 1977. A worker made the mistake of removing cooling rods incorrectly during a routine fuel change. This led to a huge radioactive leak, but Soviet authorities hushed up the incident so no casualties were ever reported. The government decommissioned the plant after the incident. Number 8. SL-1 Experimental Power Station, Idaho. In 1961, the SL-1 nuclear reactor in Idaho exploded, resulting in the only fatal reactor accident in US history. The SL-1 was one of several reactors built in Idaho to learn about the process of creating nuclear energy. Sadly, when 3 military men came to restart a reactor after an 11-day shutdown for maintenance, something went wrong with the control rod and the result was an instant explosion. All 3 men died, but no radioactive contamination left the building, so no one outside got exposed to the radiation. Number 9. Saint Laurent, France. France has experienced 2 level 4 nuclear accidents at the same nuclear facility of Saint Laurent. The first time was in 1969 when the uranium in the reactor melted, causing a partial meltdown. Workers then spent a year cleaning and repairing the reactor in a highly toxic environment. France continued its nuclear development program, but unfortunately another incident occurred at the Saint Laurent in 1980. The reactor's coolant system failed, causing 2 fuels to melt in the reactor. The authorities provided no information about the incident beyond announcing that no radiation had escaped outside of the reactor or polluted the environment. Number 10. Tokimura, Japan. Japan has experienced a nuclear accident in 1999 as well. It occurred in a small plant where 3 workers were mixing 2 kinds of fuel to make uranyl nitrate for a nuclear reactor. Unfortunately, they misjudged the amounts they needed to mix and ended up using 7 times the permitted amount of uranium. This resulted in radiation poisoning, which killed 2 of them. Over 70 other people, most plant workers but also a few civilians, were exposed to high levels of radiations as well. Authorities asked residents living close to the plant to evacuate their homes while they ensured the area was safe and contamination free. While nuclear power might be a sustainable source of energy, there is no denying that it comes with its own risks. We can only hope that history doesn't repeat itself and the world doesn't have to live through another nuclear disaster. Well, there you have it. 10 things you didn't know. Or maybe you did? Either way, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like, and if you want to see more videos like this, maybe even subscribe. See ya!